All right, welcome back to the show, guys. Today we have on Coach former Coach Don Nehlen, who is a retired Hall of Fame football coach. The purpose of this interview is to just, get into the mind of somebody who's done it on the highest level in front of the nation's eyes. Just see how he managed his career, his finances, his families, his expectations, all the things that we sort of forget, when we just see and read names in the newspaper or see highlights on TV. Coach Nehlen, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem. Glad to be on.
All right, my first question is, I'm doing my research. I always like to do my research on my guests. This is a very basic question, but I just figured I'd ask. Did you always want to be a coach? I mean, you got to play some in college. Did you always want to coach, or was it more of a transition of, hey, it's the next best thing I can do?
Well, it's a funny thing. I went to college on a three-way scholarship. I had a football scholarship, a baseball scholarship, and a basketball scholarship.
Wow.
I had 1/3 for each sport. And my major was accounting. My dad was kind of an accountant. And at the end of my freshman year, we got a new football coach. And he was completely different. He brought in a coaching staff, and he just kind of overwhelmed me. And all of a sudden, I said to myself, wonder what those guys are doing over there every night. I'd see the lights on in the football office and the coaches over there. And anyhow, to make a long story short, all of a sudden I went from wanting to be a pro baseball player to wanting to be a football coach, all because of my college coach, Dwight Perry.
Wow. So it was just curiosity?
Well, it was, like I say, my freshman year at Bowling Green, we were the worst football team in America. And Coach Perry came in and changed it completely around. All of a sudden, we became a good football team, very competitive. All the players loved the guy, and he just had a unique personality. And I just said to myself, man, what a great way to make a living. And so at the end of about the end of my sophomore year, I knew I wanted to be a football coach.
Wow. That's great. Now, give us a little fast track of your undergrad, or let me not say undergrad, but your first seminal moments coaching, being a GA. Tell us about some of those. I believe you were at Bowling Green.
Yeah, well, I graduated from Bowling Green in 1958, and I took a job as the sophomore football, basketball, baseball coach at Mansfield Senior High School. I taught phys ed and geography, and then I went back at night and ran the weight program. So I was a busy guy. Marianne and I ate dinner about 9 o'clock every night my first year. And I was born and raised in Canton, Ohio, and I had a fella that kind of watched over me. He was kind of a mentor to me, who worked at the Timken Roller Bearing Company. And like I mentioned to you, I wanted to be a pro baseball player. And when I was 16 years old, I was the youngest baseball player in the Class A League in Canton, Ohio, thanks to Timken Roller Bearing. They gave me a job because to play for their team, you had to work at the company. So they hired me in the summer. And that's how I wanted to be a baseball player. But I was only there a year at Mansfield because that same guy, Earl Schreiber, came over and wanted me to work full-time for the Timken Roller Bearing Company. And I told him, I said, Earl, I'd kind of like to coach. I think I can coach. I don't know. I was just a sophomore coach, sophomore football, basketball, and baseball. And he said, well, if you don't want to work for the Timken Company, he says, the Canton South football job is open. And he said most of their board members are real good friends of mine. And he said, it's a lousy job. They haven't won in 4 years. Maybe I could get that job for you. I said, that'd be great. And he did. Lo and behold, I'm 23 years old, and I'm now the new head football coach at Canton South High School. And it was a lousy job, like he said. They hadn't won. And but we turned it around. We won 4 games my first year, 4-4-1. Then we went 6-3. Then we went 7-2, and then we went 8-1. And I left there and I went to the University of Cincinnati. And at Cincinnati at that time, you were only allowed 5 coaches and the head coach. And so you coached both offense and defense. So I coached the running backs and the wide receivers and quarterbacks on offense, and I coached the secondary on the defense. And I was only there a year, and I went back to Canton, Ohio, and I took the Canton-McKinley High School job as their head coach. And that was probably at that time the second best high school coaching job in America. I had a budget of $100,000, and I taught one class, and we averaged about 9,000 people to every game. And believe it or not, I was only there a year, and I went up to Bowling Green as the defensive coordinator for 3 years. And then at the tender age of 31, I was named the head football coach there. And I spent 9 more years there at Bowling Green as the head coach. And then I went to the University of Michigan, where I was the offensive coordinator and the recruiting coordinator and primary responsibility of the quarterbacks. And I had Ricky Leach, who was first-team All-American at that time, who was my quarterback. I just loved him. He was a great kid, a great competitor. Ended up playing for the Detroit Tigers in baseball. But anyhow, at the end of 3 years, West Virginia called me up and said, "Hey, we've been checking you out, and we'd like to hire you as our next head football coach." And everybody told me I was crazy to take the job. Bo Schembechler said, "Don, if you win, you'll leave, and if you lose, you'll get fired, so why in the hell are you going?" And but I just kind of had a vision that I wanted to build a program there, and so anyhow, to make a long story short, off I went to West Virginia, where I stayed for 21 years. So that's my background and my history.
It's pretty great. A couple questions about that. Now, as you're, I don't want to say crisscrossing the country because you're basically in Ohio and Michigan, and then ending up in West Virginia. What's it like just moving your family around, making sure that you have expenses taken care of? What's it like, especially when you're not the head coach?
Well, early in my career, money was a major problem because I made very, very little money, and every job I took never paid anything. Heavens, I was a major college head football coach. We played Purdue and Syracuse plus the Mid-American Conference, and my starting salary was $13,000 as the head football coach of Bowling Green. But I thought that was great because as an assistant I was making $9,500, so I got a heck of a raise. Anyhow, finding housing and my wife. One thing I'll tell you about coaching. You will not find successful football coaches that have not had tremendously good wives, because when you're a football coach, your wife is raising your kids. And I spent quality time with my kids, but I did not have a lot of time with them growing up, because about July 15th, we'd kiss our wives goodbye, and we wouldn't see them until Thanksgiving. I mean, I went to work early in the morning, got home late at night, 7 days a week. And then when that was over, we started recruiting. And so you better have a wife that does a good job with your kids and a good job packing. And I remember we went from Mansfield to Canton to Cincinnati to Canton to Bowling Green, all within a span of about 3 or 4 years. And Mary Ann said to me, "You know what, maybe we ought to get a covered wagon." She said, "I'm already done unpacking from the last move, and we're off again." But all of those are major problems. But, your kids are little, they're resilient. You're young. You don't need a lot of stuff. Money was never, these coaches today have agents and make a fortune. I never asked anybody what they were paying me. All I wanted was the opportunity. I never even asked them what they were paying me here at West Virginia. I started out at $44,000, and that wasn't much more than I was making at Michigan, and I never blinked an eye, because I didn't care.
So let's talk about that for a second. You're saying that you never blinked an eye. What motivated you? That sounds like a very canned question, but I think it shows why you cannot focus on the money or focus on other things. Was it just your vision? Did you have this vision that just propelled you to the point where you were like, I don't care what they pay me. I'm here to do my job?
Well, here, I'll give you a background. When I was the youngest head coach in America at Bowling Green, and Bowling Green had a lot of success with Coach Perry and Coach Gibson. And they all taught classes, and so did their assistants. So when I went there as defensive coordinator, I taught classes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And a lot of the other coaches taught on Tuesday and Thursday. You either had a Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday teaching schedule. Well, during the time I was an assistant coach, the Mid-American Conference started to change. And a lot of new coaches went to the different schools, and they didn't have to teach. Well, when I got the job at Bowling Green, my coaches still had to teach. And I found myself running 500 miles an hour, but not going anywhere. And that was a tough situation for me. So I go off to Michigan, and I go back as an assistant football coach. And at that time, Michigan was known as probably, if not the best football program in America, at least one of the top 2 or 3. We won the Big Ten. We went to Rose Bowls. It was just a great time. And Coach Schembechler was a great guy to work for. But as I sat there in those staff meetings and I looked at our football team, I said, you know what? Everything we're doing here at Michigan, I pretty much was doing at Bowling Green. And I had an itch to be a head football coach again. And when West Virginia called me, and I knew it was a bad job because they had gone through 4 or 5 straight losing seasons, and the facilities were horrible, and poor Frank Signetti had run into some real health problems. And I knew, first of all, whenever you take a job, it's down a little bit or it wouldn't be open. And when Bo told me, he said, Don, if you stick around at Michigan, I'll get you a good job. He says, I just think you're silly to take this job. He says, you're playing Penn State and you're playing Pitt. You got Oklahoma on there. You got Florida on there. He says, I just don't know if you can pull that thing out. And anyhow, I said, hey, Bo, when you came to Michigan, it was kind of down a little bit too. But you built a great program. You didn't run out. You hung in there and you got it done. And I says, I've taken and I've drawn a circle around Morgantown, West Virginia of 300 miles. And I said, I guarantee you there's a ton of football players within the radius of 300 miles of Morgantown, West Virginia. And I said, if I can't get 12 or 13 good players a year, then I ought. And so I said, I'm going to take the job. And, when Dick Martin offered me the job, he said, we'll pay you $44,000 a year. And he said, I'll try to get you $10,000 for your radio and television. And I said, that's fine with me, no big deal. Because I didn't take any job to get a raise. I took a job for an opportunity to turn a program around, and that's why I came to West Virginia.
Wow. So let's talk about West Virginia. Let's let the monkey out of the bag a little bit. I am a West Virginia alum, so I have vested interest in this story, just so everybody knows. But what's the story behind the Flying WV? I've read some things, and I want to hear from you. You came here because you had a vision. You came here because you wanted to put this program in a better place. Exactly. So how did you start doing that?
What? Oh, the Flying WV?
Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah, the Flying WV.
Well, here's how that came about. When I came here, I came down here in December of 1979 and took the job. And then I told them, I said, listen, I'm not taking this job if I can't finish out the bowl game with Michigan. I said, I'm in charge of that offense, and Bo Schembechler has been tremendously good to me. I'm not running out on him. I said, if you want me to coach, I'll take the job, but then I'm going back to Michigan and coach for 2.5 more weeks. I'll be here New Year's Day ready to go to work. So they said fine, and so I went to we played North Carolina in the Gator Bowl that year. We played in 2 Rose Bowls and a Gator Bowl. And then after that game, I got my car and I drove back. I drove to Morgantown, and of course nobody's around. It's over New Year's and so forth, and so I'm looking at all this film, and I had a hard time picking out which team was West Virginia because they had most of the time white on, and I just never saw any blue and gold. And I had hired a guy from Colorado who was a football manager there to be my equipment man by the name of Mike Karen. And, I don't know, it was probably the first or second week in January of 1980. I told him, I said, Mike, in our uniforms, we're going to be blue and gold. And it's just that simple. We're wearing gold pants and we're wearing a blue jersey with gold numbers. I said, I want a dark blue helmet. And I said, on that helmet, I want a WV in gold. And he said, well, how do you want the WV? I said, Mike, I'm paying you an exorbitant salary, $17,000. I said, you go down and you scratch around WV and see what you come up with and bring it back to me. So he came back up and he had a couple WVs, this and that. And anyhow, to make a long story short, I said, hey, we'll just take this bottom and push it up here, and this is kind of interlocks, WV. And I took it down to our athletic director, and I said, Dick, I don't know if we have a logo around here or not, but I said, I don't want the state of West Virginia with the script West Virginia written on my helmet. And I said, our colors are blue and gold, so I'm going to have a daggone blue helmet with gold on it. And I said, I want to put this WV on both sides of my helmet. And I said, but I need somebody that's an artist or somebody that can sketch it to, to scale. And he said, my brother is an artist. He says, he'll do that. I said, great. So Dick sends him this, this sketch. And anyhow, he designed that, he worked it up to that scale. And Mike Karen and I, we ordered a bunch of decals and stuck them on our helmet. And the first year, nobody got very excited about it. But the second year, we went down to Florida and beat them in the Peach Bowl. And the phone started to ring and said, hey, Coach, where can I get one of those decals like you have on your helmet for my car? I said, well, give me your name and I'll send you one. And we sent out, a couple hundred, I suppose, which was no big deal. And then the next year we opened up with Oklahoma out in Norman, and we beat those guys. Well, after we beat those guys, every truck in West Virginia wanted my WV. We got so many phone calls, everybody wanted this WV, and I called Mike Parsons. I said, Mike, I am not in the logo business. You guys got to take this thing over and do whatever you have to do to get these logos out. But I said, I can't be sending people logos all the time. I said, first of all, we don't have that many of them. We just buy them for our helmets. And that's exactly how it got started. And it just shows you how dumb I was. Because if I had any brains like these coaches today with agents and everything, I could buy that stadium. Because that logo would have been patented by me.
Well, I like to think that you had your mind on a, dare I say, a bigger legacy, if that's worth saying. But I can just see almost 30 years ago, well, more than 30 years ago, how big making that your brand of football, the state's brand of football, just how that could just take off after playing the bigger schools, the more publicized schools, and everybody who associates with the university and the state wants to represent that. So I could see how that would take off in only a couple of seasons.
Oh yeah, it did. Our football program just took off like wildfire at the end of the 81 season. In fact, in 1979, they sold 4,000 season tickets and averaged 18,000 people. My first year, I think we sold about 18,000 season tickets and averaged, we went into the new stadium that had seats for 50,000. The old stadium had seats for about 35,000. And we filled our stadium almost every game my first year. Now, I don't know what I can't remember what our attendance was, but the stadium for the most part was pretty much filled up. And the people in this state were just so hungry for a football team. And then, of course, the next year we won 9 games and beat Florida, and the next year we beat Oklahoma, and it just kind of skyrocketed. And Pitt was such a great rival because when I came here, Danny Marino was their quarterback, Hugh Green. They had so many pros and All-Americans, and we played them in Penn State back-to-back, and we had Boston College, Virginia Tech, you name them, we played them. And but we were able to get the program turned around, and I'm not taking a bunch of credit for it because we had a little bit of luck. Things fell into place, and we won some games. The ball bounced our way a few times, and we got it rolling pretty good. And so the decade of the 80s was a pretty good, decade. And, of course, in 88 we won them all and played for the national championship against Notre Dame. But like I say, it was a work in progress, and I had a great and Dr. Gordon Gee, a really good president who left us expand the stadium, expand the facility building, now the Pushkar Center, and moved that thing forward, made the big weight room, and wrapped the stadium around the top of it. And we were able to do a lot of things, and it took me a long time to get the indoor facility built, but I finally did because I never had any place to practice when we played bowl games. It drove me crazy. We played Florida in the Sugar Bowl one year, and we had so much ice and snow that we had about a 10-yard square in the weight room trying to run some plays. It was just ridiculous. And then we tried to go over to the Shell building, and all the guys got shin splints, and it was crazy. But anyhow, I had a lot of fun in my 21 years.
Now, I think you're one of the few. Well, let me not say few guys. I think you're one of the guys in the past 30 years of college football who has built a program from, let's just say, modest beginnings. Whether it's the logo or just building morale, getting an indoor practice facility. For those of you who don't know, the Shell is more like it's more like a track.
Yeah, the Shell building is a track building.
Yeah, it's not, it's definitely not for team sports. So let's just say that. How did you? I mean, we talked about this. I kind of touched on this when we were talking about your salary. How you just wanted to sign the X and get started. What did you like as you're going through season by season, and as you're accumulating a staff, and as you're seeing your recruits improve? You're starting to see guys actually go and get drafted in the NFL, actually play well in the NFL. Let's try to break down like your thought process, if that's possible. Is it more so, hey, the program's going in a good direction, or is it just more so, that's great, that's nice, I'm happy for, say, Jeff Hostetler, or I'm happy for Anthony Beck, or something like that, and you just keep it moving? Or is it one of those things where you're like, okay, this is where we're keeping our eyes on the prize, but these are great milestones?
Well, first of all, like I said, I think we got a little lucky. We turned the program around very quickly, playing a very, very difficult schedule, much more difficult than any of my predecessors played, because the Big East, when I was in it, was pretty good, and I wasn't even in it. We were an independent for about 10 years, playing everybody in the country. So when we started to win, naturally, and started to build our facilities, when we expanded that stadium and wrapped that end zone around and built that beautiful weight room and had all those offices and the team meeting room, we finally had something to show recruits. And then we filled in the other end to make it a bowl. And we all of a sudden went from a lousy stadium to, when I first came, to a very, very nice stadium with a great weight room. And plus I wanted it self-contained. I had the training room there. We had our training table. Our kids ate there. I made it a self-contained. We had our study table. Our academic people were there in the building, so that we were able to sell moms and dads, hey, this is these kids home, away from home. Once they get here at 2 in the afternoon, they're going to be here till 10 at night. We're going to know what they're doing. We're going to know that they're eating good food. We're going to know that they're studying. We're going to know everything about them. And we just was able to sell our program. And we were able to recruit good kids. I wasn't interested in a bunch of bums who were going to go rob a bank or some other damn thing and put tattoos and earrings up their nose. I wasn't interested in those kind of guys, and we didn't recruit them. When they came in my office, if I didn't like them, I didn't offer them a scholarship. And the kids I offered a scholarship, 95% of them, I was in their home. And I met their mom and I met their dad. You mentioned Tony Beck. Tony Beck was not recruited by anybody. When he walked in my office, he was handsome. His mom and dad were handsome. They had a coat and tie on. They were yes, sir, and no, sir. He was about 6'5", kind of skinny. I said, how in the devil can you go wrong with a guy like this? Mark Bolger, the same way, was not recruited. He walked in my office. His mom was good-looking. His dad was big and strong, a handsome guy, and yes, sir, and no, sir. And I said, how can you go wrong with a guy like this? And so we just, picked some guys out that a lot of people didn't want, who turned out to be pretty darn good for us. And the kids that were here when I got here were hungry for a change. And it was not, and I am by no means saying that Frank Signetti did not do a good job, because that's not true. Frank did a good job, but his hands were tied behind his back completely. And but the kids had been down for so long that they welcomed a change, and that helped. We didn't have many football players, but we had 5 or 6 pretty good ones. My problem with my first couple teams is we had absolutely no depth whatsoever, and it took a while for us to get a little depth. But and when I recruited kids, I left them know that I was not going to run off for another job. I could have taken, if I told you how many jobs I turned down and what they were, you wouldn't believe it. But I must have turned down 10 of the best jobs in America at least 3 and 4 times my salary. But I had made a commitment to them, and I was going to fulfill it.
Now, let's talk about that a little bit. You talked about, we did get the pleasure of talking with Tony Beck earlier in the summer, and he recounted the story as far as just saying he wasn't really recruited at all, and he came down to Morgantown, and he knew that he wasn't highly recruited, but, he just wanted a shot. And he said, Coach Nehlen basically told me that probably won't play till my senior year, if that. But they wanted to give me a shot, and that's all I wanted. So just in hearing that story and hearing your side of the story, it's a mini full circle in the sense that, the guys that you wanted were hungry, admirable guys that fit into what you wanted the West Virginia football team, West Virginia football program to be about.
Exactly. I don't ever remember telling Tony Beck he wouldn't play till he was a senior. I remember telling Tony Beck he better get his butt in the weight room and get himself built up, and when you get yourself strong, you're going to play. But Tony was just a gem. I mean, he's still a gem today. I just love him. But we had a great relationship with our kids. We were a big family. I brought the family tradition here, and I brought the saying, once a mountaineer, always a mountaineer. I did all that. Your coach, Rich Rodriguez, he was a little skinny guy down at North Marion. He was a walk-on for me, and turned out to be a pretty decent football player. Not great, but solid. And our program stood the test of time. In 21 years, we averaged over 7 wins a year, playing some of the stiffest competition in America. And, we had a few valleys, but we didn't stay in the valley too long, I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the tests of time for any coach, any player, any program, any sports team, any presidency, we can go on and on with the analogies, but it all goes into success. Success is consistency over time, and, that's just a very basic definition of it. And when you can do what you did for 21 years and churn out the men, forget about the football players, okay, and the potential coaches, but when you can churn out the men that you churned out, what does that do for you as a coach, as somebody who, like you said, 95% of those guys that you gave scholarship to, you were talking to their parents in their home, in their houses. I mean, what does that do for you looking back?
Well, it's a funny thing. I'm going to be 78 years old, and I coached a lot of great kids at a lot of places. But and I can't even tell you how many games I won anymore. And I don't even remember some of the big wins. I remember some of the losses, but the kids, and I shouldn't be calling them kids, they're men, and they got kids. But the proudest time that I have is the spring game when Dale Wolfley invites all those guys back, and they all give me a big hug. That's worth $1 million. And those are just special guys, and now they have kids. And I saw where we just made a commitment to Dale Wolfley's son, and his name, I think, is Stone. And
yeah.
I recruited Dale, and I recruited Ronnie Wolfley, and I knew his mom and dad. And when I had Dale, his dad died, and that was a tough time for Dale Wolfley. But they thought so much of our program that they want their kids to come here. Almost every guy we had on our football team now wants to send their son to West Virginia. If they wouldn't have had a great experience here, they wouldn't be calling saying, "Hey, Coach, I got this. My son's 18 or 16 or 14, and he's doing this or that." They wouldn't be doing that if they didn't have a great experience here. And that's what I'm most proud of. Plus the fact that in 21 years we took a poor program and made it darn good and never once cheated. We never cheated. And we never once had a smell of an NCAA investigation for any way, shape, or form. In fact, some of my colleagues, when we played for the national championship, said to me, "Don, are you cheating down there? How in the hell are you playing for a national championship at West Virginia? What are you doing down there?" And I said, well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. We ain't cheating. And but that's just off the huff.
Well, I mean, in those regards, what are some of the lessons that you learned? Whether it's, going through, as your wife said, going through the covered wagon stage, or building a program, giving it a brand new identity. It's a brand new logo, or 21 years at the same place and not cheating, or even just coming back and doing the spring game and seeing some of your former players and just, and enjoying the moment. What are some of the lessons that you've learned through that span?
Well, I think the biggest lesson that, it's easy to be a great coach sitting up in the box. But, I learned a long time ago that the best coaching is often done off the field. If you make kids feel important, if you make them feel that they have a role on the team, and if you make them feel special and that you can't do without them, regardless of where they are on the depth chart, then you're going to have great morale on your team. And if you have great morale on your team, you're going to win a heck of a lot more than you're going to lose, because morale is the name of the game. And my number one objective always was to have great morale on my team and great morale on my coaches. And I worked very, very hard at doing that. And I wanted every kid on my team to feel like he was special. And, one of the ways that I knew that those kids felt that they were special is I was a clean freak. My coaches always says, Coach, you're a clean freak. But I wanted that building to be spotless all the time, because I had a lot of pride in that building, and I wanted my team to have a lot of pride in that building. But almost every weekend during the winter, my players would come over and say, Coach, my mom and dad's coming down, or my girlfriend or my grandma and grandpa, would you mind if I brought them out and they could come through our building and see our weight room and our meeting rooms and all of those things? And that made me feel great, because they wanted their family to see the program and the family they belonged to at West Virginia. And I knew that guy felt special if he wanted Grandma and Grandpa to see what we had going for us. Just a little thing, but I think little things make winners.
That's so key. I look at, I'm not going to name any names, or I'm not going to name any programs, but I look at how, let's just say, the new generation of coaches try to attract players, and how they try to build programs. And obviously, not being there day in, day out, you can only see, the after effects of what's going on. But every team I've ever played on, and every team that I've ever seen, whether it's on TV or play against in person, that is really, really good, everybody, from the team captain to the equipment guy to the coaches to whoever else traveled with the squad, loves everybody there, and the morale, like you said, is through the roof.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
To me, that's something that I don't know if programs focus on that anymore. I think it's something more of we take it for granted. Oh yeah, we're winning, that's why we all want to be here. Well, that's not always, the best case scenario, but I totally agree with just when the morale is up, no matter if it's the guy who's, probably only going to play special teams, a couple kickoffs, if there's a blowout, if he wants to be there and if he's cheering on his buddies that he knows will play more than he ever will, that's the Webster's definition of a team.
Now, the job of a coach is to make the worst player on the team feel special, just exactly like the best player on the team feels. You have a Major Harris, or you have a Jeff Hostetler, or a Darryl Talley, or a Tony Beck, or a Mark Bolger, or an A.B. Brown, or Adrian Morrell, or a whoever, some of the great players that I had, it wasn't hard for me to make sure they had great morale because the newspaper took care of that. They constantly build them up. But how about that fourth-string quarterback who knew he'd never get in a game that had to run the scout team? Or that fourth-team offensive tackle who got the crap kicked out of him every Tuesday and Wednesday? Those are the guys that make you a great team. And it's the job of the head coach to make sure those guys feel special. And those are the kind of guys that we did a great job with. I made sure everybody on my football team knew that they were special. And I worked at it.
Yes, that's awesome. That is awesome. Wow. I mean, this has been fun. I mean, not only, like I said, I mean, I played ball at WVU, and I know some of the history. I played under Coach Rich Rodriguez, so I know about, the once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. And I think the one thing that Coach Rod doesn't get enough credit for, not that, we're talking about Coach Rod in this instant, too much, but, I mean, all the guys loved each other. I mean, mind you, we came from different places. We competed against each other. We all loved each other, and we all just loved hanging out at our facility. So to do this interview and to hear how you built that and what was important to you, it kind of gives me chills because Coach Rod played under you. Coach Rod, learned from you.
Well, he played under us, and then he was one of my, I forget if he was a graduate assistant for me and also a volunteer coach. So hopefully a lot of his concepts came from me. Now, my concepts came from Deutt Perry and Bo Schembechler. And that's where I learned those concepts of making your players feel special, and the best coaching is often done off the field. And, you have a plan, you work your plan, and you have enough confidence in it that you don't sway. And, so I'm sure Rich took some of that with him, and I'm sure he's using that now at Arizona. So, it's coaching is, it's changed a lot. The money today, don't misunderstand me. Hey, I'm all for coaches making money, but I just wonder if we haven't gone a little overboard. I would hate to be the physics professor or the chemistry professor and read where the football coach makes 20 times what I make. And to be honest, that was one of the things that I never, I had not plenty of money to live on. We weren't starving. Heavens, if I was hungry, I could eat at the training table. But I never wanted the professors here at West Virginia University to think that I was making tons of money and they were not. I always felt that was not quite right. And so most of the time I probably made just about what the professors made, because I know when we played Notre Dame for the national championship, I think I was making $80,000 or $85,000, and I was probably the lowest paid coach for a long, long time. But like I say, that was no big deal for me, and it was my fault, because if it would have been a big deal, I'd have pounded the desk and said, "Hey, I deserve more money." But I wasn't worried about that. That's more money wasn't going to make us win. I was only concerned about building a program, and winning some games and making this a good place that our fans could be proud of. That was my sole goal, and I worked my tail off to do it. One thing for sure, win, lose, or draw, for 21 years, I gave them 80 hours a week for 21 years. I guarantee you that. I busted my tail.
Yeah, I'm laughing because, it's funny. A couple questions ago, you answered a question by saying, it's the little thing. So it's funny when you say Oh yeah. By the way, I'm not going to ask for more money that I don't need, because me getting paid more money is not going to help our team win. And it's like, some would say, well, coach, that's where you have it all wrong. But I understand that. I mean, that's deep in its simplicity.
And probably, I came from a generation that money was, money today, there's so much more of it. I don't know where it all comes from. I mean, kids have cars and phones and jewelry and, and I mean, my generation, we didn't have any of that. And, there were 6 kids in my family, man, we just tried to eat. We didn't worry about having 2 cars. We hoped to have enough pork chops for dinner. So
yeah,
it was just a different deal then. And like I say, more power to these coaches that make a lot of money, but how you just say to yourself, how much is enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Go ahead.
Well, when the players get room, board, books, and tuition, and it's their ankles and knees and backs and everything else, and the coach is making millions, you start to wonder. And but like I say, it's a different time, and football is probably. I know when I grew up, they always said baseball was the national pastime. I'm not sure that's true today. I think football is the most popular sport. I mean, every Friday night the high school stadiums are packed. Saturday the college stadiums are packed. Sunday and Monday night the pros are packed. I mean, it's just amazing. The popularity of football has just unbelievable, skyrocketed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, when I was in grade school, that's what everybody said. Baseball is America's pastime. Now, I kid you not, I think football, and then the football off season are the top 2 America's pastimes. Like it never ends.
Oh yeah, I go out the golf course all the time, and they say, "Man, I can't wait till football starts. Can't wait till football starts." And nobody ever says, "Hey, the Pirates won last night." They say, "I can't wait till football starts."
Yeah.
And like I say, that Canton McKinley High School job I had was unbelievable. I mean, I had 14 coaches, and I taught health at 8 o'clock in the morning. That was it. The rest of the time was football. And I made $10,000 at that job. And I left there and went to Bowling Green for $9,000. So that tells you I wasn't very smart. But football was very, very important in that community clear back then. That it was a hotbed of high school football at Canton and Massillon area in Stark County in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where it's sort of weird, but I think that you got paid in a manner that fulfilled you, that no amount of dollars could have written for you. That sounds very Disney-like and very corny, if you will, but I'm realizing more and more that certain people it's not about. I mean, like you said, it's not. I mean, how much more money can you get? And obviously, we're talking about a different generation, a different era, where you're getting paid $9,000 a year to do all of what you did. That blows my mind. But it also proves definitively that you did a wonderful job, and money was not a factor in that. B, you thrived. You didn't struggle. Like you said, you focused on what you were there for. And C, you could continue to climb. it did not set you back, you know. It did not deter you from your goals, your dreams. So, I mean, hearing that, I mean, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
Well, appreciate that.
Well, this has been a great interview, Coach. I appreciate you coming and doing this interview. This is I'm a history guy. I like hearing about the history of the game, and this is more of a personal interview, if you will, because I get to hear the history of a program that I flew across the country to come play for. And
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. This is a good place. Good people here.
Yes.
Good people in West Virginia.
Yes.
That's for sure. Well, listen, I enjoyed talking to you too. Old coach, I don't get to talk much about football anymore, so this was been fun for me too.
Well, yeah, we have to do this again because I love hearing the stories and just I didn't know that you guys were hawking flying W's the season. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot of things you don't know, so someday we'll get together again.
All right. Sounds good, Coach. Thank you for doing the interview.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see you. Have a nice night.
All right. Thank you all for being a part of it.
Yep. Bye-bye.